My annoying sister always runs around after a natural disaster or a shooting saying God is in control. Is he? And a few words on what may be the most important pro-life Supreme Court ruling in a decade. Today on Free Range Q&A with Al Kresta. Welcome to this episode of Free Range Q&A with Al Kresta. I'm Nick Tom, along with Al and our good friend Bob. Sometimes good friend. We are going to take your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and email freerange@avemariaradio.net. That's freerange@avemariaradio.net.
I've stood up for Bob in the past, but this is not Occupy Wall Street, Occupy. Would you mind? Thank you.
All lives matter. In my opinion, not all chicken lives matter.
Yeah, well,
we'll set that aside.
We'll get to know them more personally in the future
someday. Yeah. Okay, how about Donna in Boise, Idaho? She emailed, "My sister is a good Catholic, but she has the annoying habit of running around saying God is in control every time something terrible happens. After the Paris terrorists killed all those people, I knew the first words out of her mouth would be, God is in control. She thinks she is reassuring everyone, but if God is in control, why is the world in such a mess?"
Yeah.
It's a great question.
When it comes to controlling the world, God oftentimes appears to be something of an underachiever. But, the good news is that you're not alone in this. She's not alone in this. We're not alone in this. The 7th century prophet Habakkuk, who was a contemporary of Jeremiah, also felt the same way. I mean, he was very upset. He wanted to know why God was using the Babylonians to judge the tribes of Judah, when in fact the Babylonians were far more violent than the tribes of Judah. Listen to him. God, you have appointed them to execute judgment? You destined them to punish us? Why? You say your eyes are too pure to behold iniquity and that you can't tolerate wrongdoing, and then you tolerate these treacherous Babylonians. Why are you silent while these wicked people swallow us up? We're more righteous than they are. What kind of justice is this? That's a good question, and Habakkuk says it with great power and force. Now, for your sister, is she saying that God willed that this deranged killer, Robert Deere, killed 3 people at this Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs? Was it God's will that Planned Parenthood now gets to play the victim and grab the moral high ground just after we won so many hearts and minds through the expose of Planned Parenthood's trafficking and aborted baby parts? Is she really saying this is God's perfect will? I mean, is she saying God is in charge, but he's not in control? Is she saying that God allows whatever happens, but not everything is according to his will? Yeah, your sister does sound annoying, but I had a roommate who did just the opposite. Every time some tragedy occurred, he'd say to me, God didn't have anything to do with that, or my God wouldn't do anything like that. Look, at the heart of the Christian faith is what I call the Gethsemane mystery. Jesus, in Gethsemane, prays that his cup of suffering might be taken from him, and it wasn't. Yes, my God willed that the innocent one would in fact suffer for the redemption of the guilty. My God does that kind of thing. Maybe he's not such an underachiever after all, but he's working his redemption underneath our expectations. Why is the world in such a mess? Well, we can say only a few things with certainty, I think, on this. First of all, when we're facing evil and suffering, we are called to be the solution. That's fundamental to our identity. Humans are God's image in the world. We're Christ's body in the world. We are the ordinary means by which he works justice in the world. And your sister's platitude and my roommate's platitudes annoy us because what they do is avoid the mystery. They reduce the ambiguity that goes with living in a world like this. I mean, they protect themselves from involvement. So if God is in control, you don't have to do anything. You're off the hook. If God has nothing to do with this, you're off the hook as well. Their platitudes should serve as spurs, irritating spurs that force us to look a little deeper until we find our calling and our giftedness, our way of responding to suffering in this world. We don't have a solution. We are the solution. The second thing we know is that in the suffering of Jesus, God shows us that, in fact, he does use the suffering of the innocent to redeem the guilty. In other words, God permits evil and then uses it to bring about a greater good than would have existed had evil never been experienced. Redemption doesn't just restore what was lost. It adds something greater than what was originally present before the evil came on the scene. And that's a far cry from saying, well, God is in control, or my God would never do that kind of thing. When faced with suffering and evil, we pray, Lord, I'm yours. What can I do? And then we ask, Lord, how are you working redemption in this situation? Make me an instrument of your peace. No cavalier statements about God being in control here. So yes, your sister is annoying, but you can play Habakkuk, all right, to her, all in charity. Thanks.
Excellent. We should get your roommate and Donna together sometime.
Yes, that would be something, wouldn't it?
Had a lot of stories recently and a lot of questions about this Supreme Court case involving the Texas law. They decided last month to take it up in the next Supreme Court term. Centers around this Texas law that requires all clinics to adhere to the basic facility standards set for an ambulatory surgical center, and also requires abortionists to have admitting privileges to a nearby hospital. People are saying this might be the most important abortion decision in a decade. Why would that be?
It might lead to states' greater regulation and control of abortion clinics, but most of us thought they had that right already because of the 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood v. Casey. I'm not especially sanguine about this prospect.
Yeah.
I wonder myself if, in fact, the Supreme Court will use this decision to overturn the rights that they gave to the states in Planned Parenthood v. Casey. We'll have to see. I don't know. But we do know that the swing vote, Justice Kennedy, was in the majority in Planned Parenthood v. Casey.
Yeah.
But he seems to have moved off to the left since those years.
So all of these laws, I mean, hundreds of them have been passed, thousands probably, in all the states regarding parental notification and wait periods, and recently the pain-capable abortion acts. So are you saying the potential for the downside might be greater than potential for the upside?
Well, this is what you do. You litigate and you fight. The laws are half the laws are determined in the courts. And that's what we're going to have here. The Supreme Court will determine the degree to which states can regulate abortion practices in their states. They've had considerable latitude. This might give them more.
Yeah.
It might strip away what they have.
In the spring term. So we'll expect a decision on that sometime next year.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Free Range Q&A with Al Cresta. We want your participation. Al is never chicken to answer any questions you have. So go to Facebook, Twitter, and email freerange@avemariaradio.net. That's freerange@avemariaradio.net. We'll see you next time here on Free Range Q&A.
Bark, bark.